Okay, for today's lesson, we're going to work on volume, and this is going to be a short lesson for you here, but it's very simple, just concept, and that's why this is going to be just very simple, my hopes, as you're working on this. And that's really just depicting the thickness of the forms. So what I mean by that, when we look at this, we look at volume A, we can see that it equals to volume C, but we can see B is just a lot shorter through there, or these volumes become dissimilar just because of the thickness that's happening through there. We got to make sure that where this kind of happens a lot, someone might be drawing a character and they have their character here and they got their arm and they got this person's arm doing their thing, but all of a sudden on this arm gets to be like that thick, and or that maybe it goes from thick to thin. Their elbow starts to go from thick to thin through there, and it's not the same volume anymore. And these are very important things that you want to maintain when you're working on your characters. It happens a lot too when people are drawing feet. They may have a foot that looks something like this, and then the next foot looks something like this, and it just kind of gets just like a little bit bigger. It's something that, again, is very common. You don't always notice it, but that's what we want to consider. It's the same thing that could happen. Maybe you have someone's hand or something through here, okay, but then on your other hand, you know, of your character, you're making it, and all of a sudden that hand is just feeling just a lot bigger through there comparison to this hand. Not that it's going, you know, a spatial difference from what's right in front of you and what's further. It's just this is something that we got to make sure that we're maintaining and constantly thinking about. Okay, so volumes here are similar, even though shorter. Volumes need to be considered when creating foreshortening. In order to do it effectively, make one size of a leg or an arm longer or shorter. So what I'm doing, sort of like showing here, is where the foreshortening comes from, where we can start to just play with that. Is here I can just start to see that the legs are just it's just very even. Doesn't feel like the legs bending. So what happens is, and let me just reduce this. I'll just draw it again here. So what happens if I have my leg and I'm doing something like that, I know that maybe, you know, I got my kneecap through there, and then I'm going to make that just a little bit longer in my design. Now I can just start to see, it makes it feel like this person is maybe sitting here. You know, they can have their pants, and the pants could be hanging down through there, but now it just feels like where the pull and everything is going to be happening from that leg, that's bending. And the same thing if maybe I make this part of this thigh just a lot bigger there, and then I just drop that down and make it just feel just a little bit shorter, and pulling that. Now it feels like that leg is almost like bending back, as if the leg was doing this, if we were to look at it on like a side view. Okay, so I'm looking at this to this, all the way to there, right? That's bending, and the same thing from this to there. We can start to see, we start to have the same sort of distances going on. It's just that that's bending back. If you do it like this, and you make that even, and you make that even, all of a sudden that leg's just becoming very straight. So you're not giving me the impression, as I do something like that, I don't necessarily, let me pull that up just a little bit higher, make that even. I don't feel like it's bending, you know, as to the extent that we really want, right? So the more that leg maybe bends back over here and is going behind you, again, look what's happening. Look how the distance starts to get just a little bit smaller through there. But we do want to still understand, make sure that we're maintaining the proportions and the volumes as that leg's even bending, okay? And let's see here as we go on to the exercise, the volume exercise. What I'd like you to do simply is just look and study these and draw these different volumes just for the vases, just to get an understanding that you can see the volumes are different. These are all very similar, and these are clearly different. Just most importantly, when you're looking at things like this, we're just thinking about just the width. How I like to think about volumes, I break it down to the letter H. Okay, so whenever I'm looking at a character, I might do something where I'm looking at something like this, letter H or the letter I. I can have this. Okay, that's that thickness, and this becomes like the letter I is that thickness. Do I have that same sort of thickness with my other arm on the other side? And that's what I just kind of want to pay attention to. Maybe that arm's just bending and is going that way. So now I've taken those ideas and those concepts, and now I have this sort of same idea of what might be happening with those volumes, just keeping them consistent with each other from one hand, from one arm to the next, whatever they're doing. Okay, so that's going to be very important. All right, so that's it. Here's your exercise for you to work on. Just play around with that and just be very conscious of your volumes when you're designing your characters. Okay.